Hello, I'm Dr. Ron England, and this is Python Programming for Engineers, FTB, or From the Beginning. And we're going to be using this Spider editor, which comes with Anaconda, and Python 3.6 in this case, but it'll be 3.x in whatever case you're doing it. And this is literally from the beginning. I want you to start with the very beginning, once you got Spider installed, and see what we've got here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at Spider. I have Spider configured so that over here on the left-hand side, I've got my code window, which is my file. In this case, untitled1.py because there's nothing in it. Down over here in the right bottom corner, I've got my console, which is going to show the output of what happens over here in my programming. And then usually this upper left area here, I actually reserve for my Variable Explorer. But if you look over here, it's got Variable Explorer, File Explorer, and Help. Okay, but I like to keep it at Variable Explorer. So let's actually do something in Python. Now, if you're wanting to be a programmer and write programs that other people execute, Python is probably not what you're going to use. There's a lot of languages for that. Python is amazingly useful for engineering problem solving. So let's just solve a simple problem. Well, let's start off with the concept of a variable. A variable is going to have to be something like a letter. In this case, I used A. And it can be longer than A. I can make it A1 or I can make it, but there's rules to the namings of variables. But right now, let's just keep it simple. Any letter can be a variable name. And I'm going to set it equal to 1. Now, once I've done that, all I've done is I've actually entered that into a text editor. But if I highlight it and hit Control-Enter, what it's going to do here is over here in my console, you'll see that it actually executed. And if I come up here to my Variable Explorer, I can see that A was defined as a type of an integer with a value of 1. Well, wow, that's kind of nice. So if I go down to the next line, and let's say I say B equals 1, okay, and I execute that, same thing, B equals 1 in the console, and over here in the Variable Explorer, I see the B set to value of 1. Well, now I can get fancy because I've got two variables. Let's say C equals B plus 1. Oh, let's just do that. C equals B plus 1. So enter. And now I executed C equals B plus 1. B had a value of 1. I added 1 to it. And now C has a value of 2. But of course, I could go a little bit more fancy here. I could say C is equal to A plus B. Now, what I'm doing here is a mathematics in what's called infix notation. And infix basically says that the operation occurs in between the two operands. So in this case, the operands being A and B and the operator being plus actually gives you that. And then the return value is assigned to C. So if I run that again by Control-Enter, down here in the console, C equals A plus B, but A has a value of 1. And B has a value of 1, so C is still going to have a value of 2. Well, okay, that's kind of interesting, kind of nice, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it. Obviously, you've got lots of mathematical operators. And right off the bat, you can go, wow, Python can be a calculator, like a really handy handheld calculator that remembers variables. Going one step further here. For this video, I'm going to define a function. Now, you're going to use functions, and right now, because I'm using the Variable Explorer, you haven't had to print anything out. There's no printing. I mean, how do I actually get the output of what C is to the console? Well, it's actually simple. I say print, parentheses, C, and that's it. And then I can execute it. And if I come down into the console, the command that was executed was print C, and the value that was output was 2. Now, of course, you're going to get a lot fancier with C. Print is a function. So let's think a little bit about what a function is. A function has a name. In the case of this function, the name is print. Then in parentheses, you've got to put the arguments that the function takes. In this case, the print function will take an integer, and it will output to the console the value of the integer. So it is a function. Now, I am going to define a function. And in Python, it's relatively easy to do that. I just use the def keyword, and my function is going to be add. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass to add, I've got to add something together. So in this case, I'm going to have a variable x and a variable y and then a colon. Now what that's going to do is it's going to define, say that I'm going to have a function called add that accepts two variables, x and y, and it doesn't do anything yet. But the colon says I can start the function. And notice when I hit enter, the cursor goes tabbed over. And what I'm going to do in this function is I'm going to return x plus y. Now, that function doesn't actually exist in memory yet. I have to take it, and I'm going to have to highlight it and hit Control Enter. And what's going to happen down here in the console is that you're going to see that it just makes that definition of the function def add x plus y, return x plus y. Well, what does this mean? Well, it means I've got a function I can call. So let's just say, in this case, we've got a, b, c. Let's say d is equal to add 1, 1. If I take that and I enter it, now look over here in my variable explorer. I've now got a variable d that has got the value of 2, which is what you would expect because I had it add 1 and 1. And what it's going to do is it's going to return the x and the y. This one goes with the x, that one goes with the y, and it returns the x plus y. So the return of the add function is a d. And by the way, that's prefix notation. The operator is actually before the two operands, which are sent to the add function in the call to the add function. This is called a function call. We called the function that we created. Now what else can we do? Well, let's do e is equal to, you know what, we can have a little bit of fun here. Let's go add a comma b. Okay, same function, assigning the value to e. Whoops. So now let's go ahead and highlight it and hit Control Enter. And now I've got another variable over here in e with the value of 2. And down in the console, it actually executed it. Well, that's kind of interesting. I can get a little bit happier here. F is equal to add. Okay, in this case, I'm going to add, let's just add d and e. Because d was an actual variable that was returned from a function, and e was a variable returned from a function, and I can add those two together, Control Enter, and now it's got a value of 4. But what else can I do? Well, what if I said this? F is equal to add. What if I passed the f to the function, and let's say twice? Well, some people are going to go, well, you can't do that. Well, yeah, I can. F has got a value of 4, and if I add the 4 to the 4 and I reassign it back to the f, what's going to happen is my f's value is going to change to be 8. Now, notice that the x and the y only exist inside of this function. These variables, and you don't see them over here in the Variable Explorer because they don't exist anywhere except for inside the function. That's called function scope. X and y only exist inside the function. Now, I could say, what if I did this? Oh, I can get fancy now. X is equal to add, let's go back to that 1, 1. Ha, if I put an x there, well, if I go down, I'm going to look, but now I've got an actual x. But the x that it passed over was a 1. So the 1 got passed over here. So inside the function, the value of x was actually 1. And when it got done with the add, it passed it back and it sent it to this x. Well, you know what? This x here is not the same x as this x here. This is a global scope x, and this is a function scope x. And function scope trumps global scope. In other words, if it sees it and it's a variable of local scope, it's going to ignore that there's an actual variable of global scope on the outside. So that is as far as I'm going to go today with functions. This is Python Programming for Engineers from the beginning. Today's lesson was in variables and functions, and I only dealt with integers, but we'll deal with other types of variable types later. Thank you very much. Good programming. I'm going to keep all these videos to about 10 minutes, and you're going to be able to learn everything you ever want to know about Python. Thanks.